Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We had a very unexpected result last night in the NBA as Lou Williams took over for Trae Young and did his best Trae Young impression, getting the Hawks the win. Sap, you and I both thought that Milwaukee was going to win the game last night, and I thought that even more so when Trae Young was ruled out for the game. I said, oh, this will be a breeze, but credit to Atlanta, who was incredibly resilient and really controlled the whole game. They win 110-88. Unfortunately, the story is not about the Hawks being resilient and tying this series up at 2 games apiece. It's about a scary injury that Giannis Antetokounmpo suffered in the third quarter of this game, where he came down weird on his knee. We're sort of in a holding pattern right now, Sap, kind of crossing our fingers and hoping he's okay. There's been early reports that the team fears it's an ACL injury, but nothing obviously has been confirmed. But really, that has overshadowed the game.
Yeah, without question, Jet. And, to be honest with you, watching the game last night, I think whether Giannis got injured or not, Atlanta was probably going to win that game. They were playing at a very high level. Milwaukee seemed to be out of sorts. But when that happened midway through the third quarter, I just got sick to my stomach. I really did because, we've talked about the holes in Giannis's game. And is he really a superstar? Is he really Batman or is he Robin? Where is he in the level of the all-time great power forwards or whatever the case may be? We've talked about him ad nauseum. Everyone likes Giannis. I think he's the one superstar in the NBA that I don't know if any fans, media, other players have a problem with Giannis because we know where he came from, right? Like less than 10 years ago, he's selling watches on the streets of Athens. I mean, he was kind of discovered by the Bucks, an unknown. They took a chance on him, and look at what he is today, one of the best players in the NBA, 2-time MVP. And going into that game last night, the Bucks looked like the team to beat, right? They were up 2-1. We all agree that they should be able to finish off the Hawks because of the injury to Trae Young, and we feel that maybe they're better than whoever represents the Western Conference. And then that happens, and it just makes you sick to your stomach because I never like to see injuries. Anyone that roots for injuries is an asshole, in my opinion. Whether it's Kyrie Irving, who I know is despised in Boston, or James Harden, who's despised in Houston, I never root for injuries because I like to see all the teams with total manpower available and then see which is the best team. This postseason has been anything but that. It's just one team is going to survive and be crowned champions. But we are in a holding pattern right now. They're going to do some imaging on that left knee, which was hyperextended. When that happens and you saw the way he was writhing in pain on the floor, and then his brother Thanasis came over to help him off the court, it didn't look good. It generally doesn't look good when something like that happens. Maybe there's a miracle out there, but it just sickened my stomach to see that great player get injured when, he's really close to fulfilling his dream of being an NBA champion.
Yeah, the timing sucks. Obviously, the injury sucks, and I'm just crossing my fingers right now. I have Woj's Twitter page on a constant refresh right now, and I've been checking it all day long, really just hoping for some information. Obviously, Bucks fans and the whole Bucks team and Giannis is hoping for the best here, and that maybe he just, hyperextended in a weird way and he'll be okay and maybe have to miss a game. But yeah, it would be a real shame on so many levels in terms of if Giannis can't go and he is out for an extended period of time. For all the narratives you said, Sap, he's trying to win his first championship. It's a legacy thing for him. He's in the best position he's been in to win that in his career. We don't know if he'll necessarily be back in this position. So, that obviously affects it. The Bucks are trying to win a title for the first time since Oscar Robertson and Lou Alcindor. He wasn't even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar yet. So yeah, it sucks on so many levels, and also the aesthetic level of wanting to see an NBA Finals with two teams that are at full strength and matched up. And we've been saying this all year long, Sap, and obviously we can't come to this conclusion yet because we don't know if Giannis is actually going to be out or not. But man, the Suns have some sort of horseshoe up their asses. I mean, if they're able to get through the Clippers and then face an extremely depleted Milwaukee team or a really ahead of schedule Hawks team, I don't remember a playoffs opening up more for a team than it has for the Suns in terms of the route they faced and being able to face teams with injuries. Listen, it's not their fault, but I mean, it's really opened up for them.
Jed, I'm a big tennis fan. It almost feels like a tennis tournament where the best player just had his path wide open now because, the second seed got bounced in the round of 32, and then a tough matchup in the quarterfinals didn't happen because that player got knocked out as well. And next thing you know, that player's playing in the championship game against some unseeded player or a lowly seeded player. They win the title. It's still the U.S. Open or Wimbledon or whatever it might be, and that still goes on the trophy case. And that's what it does feel like, Jed, absolutely, because if Phoenix can get by the Clippers, they're going to face Milwaukee probably without Giannis, and again, we hope that's not the case, or an Atlanta team that maybe has the feel of last year's Miami team, that they're going to get to the finals and then be overmatched, but also an Atlanta team that also has their best player dealing with some sort of injury, that right ankle bruise, right? So even if he comes back, how effective is Trae Young going to be? Now, give Lou Williams. Lou Hudson did play for the Atlanta Hawks many,
You're going
many
way
years
back,
ago.
Yeah.
I'm going way back. You brought up Oscar and Lou Hudson in 1971, so my mush brain decided to go back to the early 70s in the Atlanta Hawks, who had a great backcourt of Pete Maravich and Lou Hudson.
But it's quite hot out, Sap, so it's okay.
It is.
Your brain can be a little mush today.
Man, I am just burnt out at this point. But yeah, Lou Williams, who would have thought that trade that was made at the trade deadline where the Hawks got Lou Williams and the Clippers got Rajon Rondo would work out better for Atlanta, because as great as Rondo is, I don't think that he could step into Trae Young's role and score like Lou Williams did last night. So, Atlanta seems to find all the answers. The thing I'm interested in, Jet, with all of these injuries, all four teams are dealing with some sort of injury. Phoenix, not so much, although Chris Paul doesn't quite look right since coming back from the COVID scare. Which coaches are best able to handle this? Now, we've seen what Ty Lue has done without Kawhi Leonard. He's been brilliant. Give Phoenix credit. They got up 2-0 in this series without Chris Paul. Atlanta last night comes out without their best player, Trae Young, and they blow doors out. I don't trust Mike Budenholzer is going to make the right adjustments if he doesn't have Giannis. Now, Giannis is also a player who might be the most important to his team of the four teams left, Jed. He does everything, right? He's their leading scorer, rebounder, leads them in assists, is their best defender, is their low post defender, is durable, is a workhorse. I mean, he's their LeBron James. Like, he does everything for that team. We're not asking Trae Young to lead the Hawks in rebounds. We're not asking Chris Paul to lead the Suns in rebounds. You're kind of asking Paul George to do pretty much everything with the Clippers, but I would think that at least the Clippers have that second player, and Paul George, who I think is better than Chris Middleton, right? I mean, Middleton's really up and down. I mean, is inconsistent as Paul George can be. Paul George is better. I mean, there's no question about that. So I would like to see what Budenholzer is going to do, because I think of the four remaining coaches, he's the weakest of the four, without question. I think Ty Lue has kind of separated himself as maybe the best coach in this sport right now. We both love Monty Williams, and we both, love what Nate McMillan has done in Atlanta. And we look at Budenholzer and go, this guy's awful slow to make adjustments. What exactly is he going to do without Giannis? Like, is he going to coach up the rest of the team? I don't trust him.
Well, I mean, they scored 88 points last night against a team that is at best not inclined to play defense. At most, they straight up just don't even try to play defense. They play a lot more defense than they did before they hired Nate McMillan, to their credit. But it's not like, they have a lot of defensive stoppers on the team outside of Capella, who's really just a low post defender. But it's like, Lou Williams has never been regarded as anything other than a negative defensive player.
Although they may be, and the numbers show they're better defensively when Trae Young is off the court. Now, as great as he is, he's a liability defender. On defender. Yeah, I mean, he makes Luka look like Kawhi Leonard on the defensive end. Maybe that's
but it's like, look at their starting lineup, Sap. I mean, Herter, Bogdanovich, Lou Williams, none of those guys are particularly good defenders. Capella's good. John Collins is good when he wants to be. But they're not built to be a defensive team. They're built to be a scoring team, which, they are.
Danilo Gallinari is not exactly coming off the bench to shut anyone down. He's a scorer. And it was nice to see Cam Reddish play last night. He hasn't really played since February. I think I had just ruled him out. I thought he was out for the year, and he showed up and played pretty well.
Yeah, and Chris Dunn played too, who you didn't even remember was on the team. I mean, listen, it was a blowout last night, and we can forget the Giannis stuff for a second, even though, that's massively impactful going forward here. But credit to Atlanta and shame on the Bucks, who had an opportunity to really put this series away. And the Bucks came out basically as flat could be. I saw somebody, I think, wrote it was like the Bucks were just, going to work and punching in the clock and be like, okay, we're here. They don't have Trae Young. We'll just finish this thing off, whatever, no big deal. And they didn't take Atlanta seriously at all. And then Atlanta said, we're here for a reason. We've been fighting all playoffs long, all season long. We've fought ourselves out of a horrible start to the season and are in the conference finals. We're not just because our best player went down. We're not going to just, lay down for the Bucks and let them, just pound all over us. So the Hawks tried and the Bucks didn't, frankly. And the Hawks are too spirited of a team to just, let them do whatever the hell they want. And so shame on the Bucks. And obviously that goes back to Budenholzer too. I mean, they did not come out with anything in this game, Sam.
No, they didn't look ready. They didn't seem to realize it was game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals. The other team doesn't have their best player in Trae Young. If you take hold of this on that given night, you're up 3-1 with 3 chances to finish this off. Game 5 being in Milwaukee. Now you can never.
If you win,
it's over at that point, I would think. I mean, I know these playoffs have been totally unpredictable because I look at these 4 teams, Jet, and I see flawed teams. We agree with that. There's no super team. Hell, there's no super team in the NBA. Yes, if Brooklyn had been healthy with Durant, Kyrie, and James Harden, they'd be as close to a super team as you could get. The rest of their roster is not all that good. The Lakers, if LeBron and Anthony Davis were healthy, they'd be close to a super team. Those are the 2 teams right now that are kicking themselves, right, Jet? The Lakers with LeBron James, the Nets with Kevin Durant, because the championship was there for the taking for both of those franchises if they had been somewhat healthy, right? I mean, if you have a healthy James Harden, even with Kyrie going down in game 4 of the Eastern Conference semifinals, the Nets probably still beat the Bucks. If Anthony Davis is at 80% but somewhat functional and LeBron's not hobbling around on that bad ankle, the Lakers beat the Suns, Denver, and I think they would take care of the Clippers.
I agree. That's what I had all year long.
The finals that we both thought was going to happen should have happened, but both teams just had too many injuries. Now these other teams are getting too many injuries, and they're all kind of dealing with it. I mean, it's chaos. It's chaos in the NBA playoffs right now. I don't know what to make of it, which makes it kind of fun because normally in the NBA playoffs, you kind of know what's going to happen, right? Okay, the Warriors are dominating the West and LeBron's dominating the East. That was a narrative forever.
Yeah, of the 4 major sports, it has been the most predictable playoffs, without a doubt. But we do have some breaking news here, Sap, from Woj. Okay. There is no structural damage to Giannis's left knee after his awkward landing last night. Ligaments are sound. Sources tell Zach Lowe and myself, being Woj. Timetable to return is still unclear. So it looks like Giannis avoided a ACL tear or something very, very serious, which is fantastic news. I would not be surprised at all if he does not play in the next game, though, or maybe even play in the rest of the series if they're hoping they can win it and then have him good to go for the finals. But that's great news.
That's great news because, I mean, again, he's probably the easiest guy in this league to root for. Like, has he ever offended anyone? Like, LeBron's my favorite player, but I can see where some
James Harden doesn't like him for some reason.
That's about it. And I think what he said about James Harden was, I hope it was tongue-in-cheek, because Harden's response was, I don't pass. I led the league in assists several times. I must be a pretty good passer. Although I'll be honest with you, if Milwaukee had gone after James Harden instead of Drew Holiday, they would have been unstoppable. I think James Harden and Giannis would have been unstoppable as a duo. I mean, how many alley-oops do you think Harden would hit?
It's a perfect. Giannis with?
Would have been perfect together. My Lord, and Giannis could have covered his ass on defense. They would have been really difficult to beat. That's great news about Giannis. Now I wonder if they're going to try to do with Giannis and I'll go back again to 50 years ago in 1970 in the NBA Finals, Game 7. Willis Reed was, beyond injured, but he came out, hit a couple of jump shots, got the crowd geared up, and then they were on their way to winning Game 7 over the Lakers. Actually, Walt Frazier had a huge game that night, and the Knicks won their one of 2 championships back in 1970. Do you start Giannis or do you bring him off the bench 6 minutes in just to see if he gets the crowd fired up, gets his teammates fired up, and you go from there? You don't want to take a chance.
Right.
Make that injury worse because this is your franchise player who's still only 27 years old. I mean, it's not like he's at the end of his career.
Here's my guess, Sap. I'm going to guess he's not going to play in the next game just as out of abundance of caution. No medical expert here. I don't know. This is just the scenario I'm guessing. and then it's in Milwaukee tied 2-2, and it is
Right.
a big heap of pressure on Chris Middleton to perform.
Yeah. Good
Holy
luck.
crap, is that a big
Yeah.
game for Chris Middleton? Biggest game of his career by far. I mean, they're going to be asking him to do a lot. So I think the question is, can Chris Middleton at home withstand the pressure of a game that is by far the biggest game of his career and the biggest game for the Bucks in 50 years?
It really is. I mean, because even when I was a Bucks fan in the 80s, they got to the conference finals twice. 1983, they lost in 5 games to the 76ers. No one thought they were going to win that series. And in 84, they got back to the conference finals and got swept by the Celtics, or lost in 5 games to the Celtics. In fact, they lost in 5 games to both of those really great teams. Those teams are just better. It's here for Milwaukee to win their first championship in 50 years. Great news that Giannis doesn't have structural damage. Who knows if he's going to play in Game 5. Maybe if you can just somehow cobble together the lineup and win Game 5 at home with the crowd behind you, Middleton coming up big, Drew Holiday coming up big, and then if you then go to Atlanta up 3-2, you rest Giannis again, and then you have him ready in case you need him in Game 7. That's going to fall on Chris Middleton. It's also going to fall on Mike Budenholzer, and of the 4 remaining coaches, I trust him the least to try to figure out what to do. The best game plan without his superstar. Now, you could look at it and say Atlanta's without Trae Young, Bucks are without Giannis. But as I said, Giannis does everything for that team. Now, without him on the court, you're giving up a lot of rebounding, you're giving up defense, you're giving up interior scoring, you're giving up so much. Trae Young's great, but they still seem to function without Trae Young last night. That could just be a one-game scenario. I mean, you don't want to lose your best player for any lengthy period of time, but that's good news, though, that it doesn't look like Giannis has any sort of blown-out knee, ACL, or whatever the case may have been.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it also helped the Hawks tremendously that they were at home last night to be able to have those role players feel more comfortable. And
Sure.
I think the Hawks relish being in this underdog role and being counted out.
Yep.
That's sort of in their DNA. I think that's what Nate McMillan has sold to them all year long, well, since he took over the head coaching job at least. And I think they love it. And I think the fans embrace it as well. So that's why they played so well last night, too, is I think they really buy into the message of, hey, we're the underdogs, but we shouldn't be. Why are teams not taking us seriously enough? And it's working. I also agree with you that it seems hard to believe that they could continue to win games without Trae Young, especially blow team. I mean, they blew out the Bucks almost from the go last time. I mean, they won all 4 quarters. Oh, no, they lost the 4th quarter by 3. But they won the first 3 quarters handily. I mean, it didn't look like much of a game really ever. And yeah, maybe if Giannis doesn't go down, maybe the Bucks make a run in the 4th quarter. But Atlanta had this thing in control.
Yeah, I mean, they were up 51-38 at the half. And I think they were up 10 when Giannis went out, or they're up 12 when Giannis went out. Milwaukee scored a basket after Giannis went out, and then Atlanta went on a 15-0 run, and that was ball game. They were just on fire. Gallinari, Reddish, all the secondary players really stepped up last night. Lou Williams, look, he can score in his sleep. That guy could be 50 years old. You could pull him off a bench, and he'll score. That was his first career playoff start in his long career, which is pretty amazing. But give him credit for being ready. And again, give that coaching staff led by I always forget his name. Nate McMillan. Why do I always stumble over his name? He should be coach of the year.
Because it's 1,000 degrees out, Sap.
It is. Why. It's 1,000 degrees out, and it's 2,000 degrees where I'm talking to you from. Got fans rolling and everything out, waiting to put air conditioners in. But Nate McMillan's. I mean, I trust him more with 3 games left in this series. I mean, Mike Budenholzer is gone from a guy who's won multiple NBA Coach of the Years to now being looked at as a real liability for the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, it took him forever to bring in Bobby Portis to the postseason when he should have done it several games earlier in that Brooklyn series. Like, he's the worst coach left by far.
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of, if you ask Milwaukee fans what's the biggest hole on this team, they'd say it's the coach. I think without question. He's the guy who's going to get the blame if they don't get there.
Yeah.
Even with Giannis down now, and let's say he doesn't play in the rest of the series, I still think the expectation amongst fans is they should beat the Hawks, regardless of if Giannis plays or not. We'll see if that happens, but Budenholzer, he has, I think, the most pressure on him after Giannis. I mean, Chris Middleton has a ton of pressure on him too, but Budenholzer's job is at stake here.
I
I
think
think if
so.
they
Yeah.
don't, I still think so, especially because of who they're playing. If they were playing Philadelphia and they lost in this series, I think fans could say, okay, Philadelphia's the 1 seed. We didn't have home court advantage. They're really good. But the Hawks, they're expected to beat, and so I still think Budenholzer's job is on the line here. And yeah, I mean, he's of the four remaining coaches. I agree with you. He seems to be the weakest, even though he has amongst them maybe the most experience. I know Nate
Does. Yeah.
McMillan's been coaching for a long time too, so it might be McMillan. But yeah, he clearly has shown that he has plenty of flaws as a coach. I think he's a fantastic regular season coach, as we saw. I mean, the past 2 years, they've had the best record in basketball, but he does have something in the playoffs where it gets tighter and the rotations get harder and you need to make different adjustments. He's struggled there, as has somebody who is also a great regular season coach and struggled in the playoffs. Mike D'Antoni is another guy similar to Budenholzer who's put up phenomenal records in the regular season, and then there's some sort of gap in the postseason. So we'll see how this plays out, and if there is indeed no Giannis for a game or the rest of the series, a lot falls on Budenholzer trying to get the most out of it. Nate McMillan didn't have his star last night and was able to make the adjustments necessary to have their team win a big game. So we'll see if Budenholzer can do the same.
Yep, gonna be interesting.
All right, Sap, we'll move ahead to the game tonight between the Suns and the Clippers. This game is going to be in Los Angeles, as the Suns are actually a 1-point favorite in this game, so basically a pick 'em. Paul George obviously was phenomenal, best game of his career, you said, in their last game. The Suns are still looking to put away the Clippers, as we talked about the other day. It's not so easy to just put away a team, especially this Clippers team. The Clippers and the Hawks have a lot of parallels in that way too, right? They're both very feisty teams that are not just going to go away quietly. But the Suns are going to try to end this on the Clippers' home court tonight. How do you see it playing out?
I think the Suns are going to come up big tonight. I mean, in the last 3 games 3, 4, and 5, Chris Paul and Devin Booker are combined 41 of 125. That's 32.9%. Let's call it 33% because we're in a good mood today. So they're hitting 1 out of every 3 of their field goal attempts. That's not good enough for those 2 players. We're talking about 2 all-stars. We're talking about an all-time point guard in Chris Paul, who finished 5th in MVP voting. We know how good Devin Booker is. They've got to be better than that. I mean, if they can be efficient, get off to a good start, build a lead, then I think they're going to be in just fine shape. They've got to take advantage of their size inside with DeAndre Ayton. Not that he was a no-show the other night, but they didn't go to him enough. I think he has a major advantage on the inside. Go to him more. He's been your most consistent player in this playoff series. And I think if they're just focused on that, they're going to be just fine. There's a ton of pressure on Chris Paul, though. I mean, this is a legacy series for him. As much as there's pressure on Paul George because now he's the guy with the Clippers because of the Kawhi injury, there's more pressure on Chris Paul. He's been to this spot before and hasn't been able to break through. He's also 36 years old. Paul George is 31, so there's a 5-year age difference. So in theory, if Paul George doesn't get to the finals this year, if Kawhi comes back next year with the Clippers, they'll be one of the favorites in the Western Conference. Phoenix next year, will they be as good as they were this year? Yeah, Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton should be better, but everything kind of fell into place for them this year. Is Chris Paul going to be better next year, a year older? This is his best chance to get to the finals. A ton of pressure on Chris Paul tonight, and I think he has to come up big. He hasn't always come up big in these games. Normally we see great players coming up big in big games. He's kind of shrunk in this scenario many times in his career, so he's going to have to come through.
Yeah, without a doubt, the most pressure is on Chris Paul, and we were just talking, about the Bucks and the Hawks, and for the Bucks, the most pressure we're saying is on Budenholzer, because Giannis, when he's been healthy, has done what you can't really blame him when they've lost games.
No.
I mean, he's played fantastic. If the Suns don't advance, the blame will be placed squarely on Chris Paul.
Yeah.
Period. It's not going to be on Monty Williams. It's not going to be on Devin Booker. It's not going to be on DeAndre Ayton. It's going to be on Chris Paul. And this is his best chance to make the finals and win a championship in his career. So if he's not able to get it done, especially the fact that they've they were up 3-1 in this series and playing a team without their best player. That's going to, just as adding a title to his resume will really increase his legacy, losing this series potentially would really hurt Chris Paul's legacy, I feel like, Sap.
Yeah, he would remain the greatest player to have never played in the NBA Finals, which shows that he's a great player, but also that he's a guy who's never played in the NBA Finals, right? So it's a big legacy moment for Chris Paul. Now, once he gets to the finals, if he does, I think he has to win the damn thing because it opened up for him with all the injuries that have taken place in the Eastern Conference, because he's either going to be playing an Atlanta team who most people don't think belong there, but they're on a really high right now, but they may have a banged up Trae Young, their best player, and we'll see if Milwaukee gets there, how good Giannis is going to be, what he's going to be playing at. Is it going to be 60, 70, 80% with that knee concern? So it's there for Chris Paul to take. The Suns of the 4 remaining teams are the healthiest, right? I mean, Chris Paul's back from COVID. You don't know how he's feeling. I mean, it's different than, say, a knee or an ankle. I mean, it's a different type of ailment, obviously. So maybe he's not quite himself. But, you know, down the stretch of games, we've seen Chris Paul throughout his career in these big games. You know, he's got that little elbow jumper where he kind of gets into the lane and then kind of fades back and takes that elbow jumper, which he never misses until it's late in playoff games. And he comes up a little bit short on it. Now, that's what I see. And as much as I love the player, I want to see him make that shot because that's his signature move. If he has a signature move, that's pretty much it. And, you know, when he's on a roll, that shot is nails. We saw the other night, he came up short numerous times. He's going to have to be better than that. There's more pressure on him than any other player. A ton of pressure on Paul George. I get that. Giannis, Trae Young. Now those guys are dealing with injuries. But Chris Paul, he's a president of the Players Union. He's an all-time great player. It's the most fascinating story, right? This 36-year-old point guard who never played in the finals has a real chance to win a championship. I mean, it would be a great moment. It's right there. And if he doesn't pull through on this, it's going to damage his legacy. Is he an all-time great player? Without question, that's not going to get damaged. He has an opportunity now, though, to go up in the pecking order and then get that title of the greatest player never to have played in the NBA Finals off his back.
Right. And it's not like one of those titles where at the end of your career, you know, so you're sort of along for the ride and you get that, you know, that title. Like, you know, Gary Payton got one in Miami. I mean, he was still an okay player, but he was by no means the Gary Payton that, you know, Chris Paul, it's not in his prime, but he is the, you know, the straw that stirs the drink on this team. Sure. I mean, he was considered the MVP of this team, rightly so. So, you know, he is the guy still on this team. And so it's a big opportunity for him to really enhance his legacy. And as far as Paul George goes, I feel like there's still a lot of pressure on him, make no doubt about it. But the Kawhi injury has put a little less pressure on him, which sounds counterintuitive because he's asked to do more, but he does have at least the built-in excuse of if they don't go to the finals, it's because, you know, Kawhi was gone. Had Kawhi played and they lost in this series to the Suns, Paul George would be getting more blame. That's just how it goes. You know, Kawhi's already won his 2 titles and been Finals MVP twice. Paul George would be getting the blame, even if he played really well. They would say, it's Paul George's fault. That's just
without question. Yeah. No, I mean, because now we're looking at Paul George going, wow, the other night, really 41, 13, and 6. That's just a phenomenal Game 5. You're facing elimination. Can he come back? Now you don't expect him to get 41 again tonight,
I was going to say, Sap, can he do it again? Can he stave off elimination single-handedly again?
He's got to be exhausted, Jet. I mean, he's played an average of 40 minutes per game. And
he's logged the most minutes by far. No one is close in the postseason. By far.
I think Devin Booker is second in minutes played, and he's 130 minutes behind him. He's averaging 40 minutes a game.
Wild.
And that's 18 games over 37 days, because the way the schedule is, you play every other day. And look, he's also a guy that plays both ends of the court. I mean, it's not like he's a great offensive player, then goes back on defense and kind of rests like James Harden could do with that hamstring in the last 3 games of the Milwaukee series. He could kind of take it easy on defense. Paul George gets to take on oftentimes the other team's best scorer. And that's why I think he's a fascinating player, because he is a both ends of the court player. So he's got to be exhausted physically and mentally. But I got to give the Clippers so much credit. The likes of Reggie Jackson, Pat Beverly, Marcus Morris, they all stepped up big in Game 5. Hell, DeMarcus Cousins at 15 points in 11 minutes. Do you realize that's his career playoff high? I mean, he hasn't played a lot of playoff games, but that's his career playoff high. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
for a
I was
guy
thinking of the teams he's played on. That's
well, he's played on every team in California.
Yes,
he really
that's
is
good.
literally played on every single team in California, which is it. Just
he likes the West Coast.
Hey, why not? You know, I mean, high state income tax, but the weather's nice.
He was good last game, Sap. He was good.
He's good. I mean, he's a guy I actually like. I mean, because I think a lot of his off-court stuff is that he's frustrated with losing when he was in Sacramento.
I don't think he's a bad person.
No, from what I understand, he's a very generous guy. Like he's like gives away a lot of money to charity.
Yeah, I think he got a bad rep. He did. I agree, Sap.
You're playing in Sacramento where, you know, from ownership down, things are a little bit awkward there, and you're just not really a good franchise. He got frustrated. He went to Kentucky for 1 year. They lost 1 or 2 games. Then he goes to Sacramento, and it's like, what the hell am I in here? You know, Larry Bird still had one of the funniest comments I ever heard. His rookie year with the Celtics went 60-22, and someone asked him, what's the biggest difference between college and pro? He goes, losing so much. Because his Indiana State team went undefeated his senior year until losing to Magic in the national championship game. He goes, losing 22 games in a season, I've never heard of that.
It's like a nightmare.
The Celtics had the best record. Yeah, it was like the Celtics had, that'd be like Tom Brady going to Tampa last year and go, I can't believe we went 11-5. I'm never 11-5. I'm 12-4 at worst, you know, because those guys are built differently. I get that. But yeah, I mean, DeMarcus Cousins is a guy who I think's had a really nice career and is a skilled guy.
He never got that massive deal either. Similar to Isaiah Thomas, his former teammate in Sacramento.
Yeah, every time he was on the precipice of this, there was an injury. Remember, he was part of the Golden State team back in 2019, coming off the bench, and he ripped up his quad. I mean, he was a nice piece on that team. That was a perfect team for him because, you know, the guy can hit threes. He's a really good passer. I mean, I know that I forget if it was Ainge or Stevens, probably more so Ainge that always liked him, but Stevens didn't, so they didn't bring him in.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Why bring in talented players? What the hell? Why not? But yeah, he played really well the other night. And look, Ty Lue is just he's grown as a coach, man. I mean, you would think that when he won the title in Cleveland, it was all LeBron, and yeah, LeBron gets a lot of credit, but you know, he had a team that was down 3-1 to a team that went 73-9. It had to be more than just LeBron and Kyrie Irving that kept that team focused on still trying to win that series. Guy's a fantastic coach.
No, I'll admit it. I was dead wrong. I thought it was all LeBron. I mean, and obviously,
oh sure,
stars take you further than coaches in the NBA. Sure. That's just a fact. But no, he's a damn good coach. He's a really, really, really good coach. I was 100% wrong.
Yeah.
He can absolutely coach, and I'm happy for him. And you know, he's getting his just due now as people are recognizing that. So good for Ty Lue. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Paul George's numbers over the playoffs, Sap. I mean, it's like I don't know how the guy's even standing. It's
right. Yeah.
You know, 18 games, 18 starts, 735 minutes played. Basically, like you said, every other day he's had no chance to rest or recuperate. I mean, it's a miracle the guy is not passing out on the court. I mean, this is ridiculous.
And again, he plays both ends, Jed. You know, the guy scores, he rebounds, he passes, he defends. He's all over the place. So, I mean, and he's taken a lot of criticism. He says he gets more criticism than any other player in the league. I don't think so.
No, that's stupid.
That title belongs to LeBron James. It always will because he's so polarizing. But you know what? If you're getting criticism, look at it as a badge of honor. That means people are actually watching you and actually have opinions about you because you're a great player.
Yeah,
you know, like
Shaq and Barkley did not like when he said that.
No, and no, they didn't. And I agree with Chuck on that one because it's like you're a great player. You got to have to take the bad with the good. I mean, Barkley is always talked about as, you know, this is the greatest player that never won a championship. He's kidded about it almost nightly on the TNT set, and he has to put up with it. And he jokes about it. You got to be self-deprecating at some moments. And you know, look, Shaq couldn't shoot free throws. You know, every player gets bashed. I mean, other than Michael Jordan, because no one dares bash him because, you know, there'll be retribution there because MJ's, you know, pretty vengeful. Now we get Scottie Pippen who's going to find that out. Look out. But yeah, so Paul George, I think if you're getting criticized, you know what? You've arrived as a player. That means that you're that good that people are going to criticize you. Tom Brady's been criticized, right? The greatest quarterback ever. People have found a need to criticize him, whether it's Max Kellerman or anyone else that, you know, have these crazy takes. But, you know, he's that good that you watch him.
I don't even think
up,
he's the most criticized player left in the playoffs. I think Giannis's game gets dissected and criticized more than Paul George.
Absolutely. And Chris Paul.
And Chris Paul, yeah.
And Chris Paul's been, upfront about it. I mean, when they went up 3-1 in this series, he goes, I don't want to hear about being up 3-1 because they were up 3-1 in round 2 in 2015 and lost to Houston, got blown out in every game. No, this is a big game for Chris Paul. I think the Suns will be just fine tonight. They've got to go back to their identity of going inside first to get DeAndre Ayton involved, and I think that will open up some things at the perimeter. But look, Jake Crowder, Mikal Bridges, they're going to have to play better, and you may see more of Cam Johnson, who I think has been a breakout star in this postseason. Who's the dude that used to play? Livingston? Remember Livingston on Golden State?
Shaun Livingston. Oh yeah.
Shaun Livingston. Okay, he was like the second guy off the bench. All I remember is
Iguodala were there, two bench guys.
The two bench guys.
Iguodala and Livingston. Yeah.
Every game he came into against the Cavaliers in the finals, like when he'd come in, it was a close game. When he left, somehow Golden State was out 6 or 7 points. He never missed shots. He would go through a 3-game stretch. He'd go 4 for 4 one night, 5 for 5 the next night, maybe 6 for 8 the next night. Just played like near perfect basketball. Cam Johnson's doing a lot of that for the Phoenix Suns. So I think that Monty Williams, who I love as a coach, I think you'll see more of him because at this point, you can't worry about hurt feelings. If Jake Crowder's not hitting his 3, then you got to get Cam Johnson in there. And look, if Chris Paul is playing at a really slow pace, you may have to see some more of Campaign in there. Or maybe you go Campaign with Paul George in the backcourt for a few minutes to give, Devin Booker a little bit of a rest because they do play at a much slower pace with Chris Paul. And I think that's not just because he's a veteran player and he wants to save energy. And I'll equate him to Aaron Rodgers. Sometimes the veterans who are so smart, they overanalyze things. So they want to get like the perfect shot out there or the perfect pass or the perfect offense. And sometimes it's, paralysis through analysis. I can't tell you how many times I've watched Green Bay Packer games and Rodgers will bleed the clock down. And I'm like, Aaron, why do I call him Aaron? I'll just say,
so you're good friends.
Well, we're good friends. To get the snap, go at a faster pace, put the defense on its heels. Chris Paul does that a lot. And I think Chris Paul and Aaron Rodgers, there's some similarities there besides the great commercials they do for State Farm. They're really smart guys who sometimes turn off teammates after a while, but they're both very over analytical, I think. And sometimes that can hurt you. Sometimes it's better to have the Jordan or Kobe approach of get the damn out of the way. I'm going to score a basket here.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that people have criticized LeBron for a lot in his career.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And Chris Paul, I guess, sometimes the same thing.
Smart.
Though at this point in Chris Paul's career, when he has somebody like Devin Booker, you're a little bit more okay with him being passive.
Right, yes.
But, yeah, Booker hasn't looked right since game 1 of the series. Obviously, he's got the broken nose and still dealing with that. But yeah, it's a big game for Chris Paul. It's a big game for the Suns. I think that they'll put the Clippers away too, but I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable wagering a large amount of money on it because the Clippers don't go away. And I don't know, the Suns haven't been here before. They have no experience doing this. And until you do it, and I said this the other day, there's always going to be question marks about your ability to finish off a team. Until you actually get it done, it's the hardest thing to do in the NBA. Is close out a series. And so the Suns are still learning how to do that. I agree with you. I would imagine that DeAndre Ayton gets way more involved in this game than he did in the last game. They need him to. And I would imagine Chris Paul's smart enough to be able to figure out how to get Ayton more involved. So we'll see what happens. But we both take the Suns in this game. And since they're favored by 1, that means that we're taking them with the points. All right, Sap. So we got that good breaking news about Giannis. We don't know what his status is going to be, but we will keep you updated. I know you're out of town for a little bit, and I will. If there's any big news or anything that happens, I will get the show up and running and get us covered. And you will be back on Monday or Tuesday, Sap?
I'll be back Sunday actually, but I figure Monday is going to be kind of a scatterbrain type of day.
Oh, right.
July 4th. So
okay.
We'll reconvene on Tuesday, July 6th. Actually, I got a dentist appointment in the afternoon. So, with a filling. So maybe we'll do the podcast with me being incoherent, which actually might be an improvement. Yeah. Might be even better.
No difference.
I'll be like Kramer when he went to the dentist. They gave him the Novocaine and they thought he was challenged. That's what most people think of me anyway.
That's my favorite episode of Seinfeld, actually.
It was a great,
my
Mel
all-time
Torme.
favorite episode.
Yeah,
it's
Mel Torme.
so funny. The Velvet Fog.
The Velvet Fog. Yeah, Kramer's got too much Novocaine, and he's you're not too bad for yourself.
They couldn't do that episode today, right?
No.
I mean, no way they make that episode today.
I watch Seinfeld like every night, like 4 hours on Saturday. It's like I'm addicted to it, and I'm looking at the stuff now, going, "There's no way in hell this stuff would run today, let alone All in the Family."
Which is a shame because Seinfeld, again, that's my favorite episode of Seinfeld of all time. I mean, it is, and
it's comedy.
They wouldn't be able to do it today.
No. I mean, Archie Bunker wouldn't even exist on today's network TV. No,
definitely not.
I mean, but that's how people talk and act. I mean, that's what art is for. It's not to whitewash, what really is there. So we'll reconvene on Tuesday. By then we'll know who's in the NBA Finals, and hopefully we won't have to do injury reports like we did today.
Yeah, and we'll see what the status is of Giannis, and Sap, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy some tennis. I know you'll be watching tennis, as you're always very invested in that.
Fighting with people on Twitter about tennis that tell me that Roger Federer is the greatest player. Yeah,
is brutal. So, it's like a war zone out there.
It's very difficult. I'm waiting to do a tennis podcast.
I will not be able to help you with that.
Yeah, we'll call it serve and volley or something like that.
Okay, well, I can say I think Federer and Djokovic and Nadal are the three best players, and that's about all.
Take it away. Take it away.
That's what I got. All right, Sap. Well, we are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Make sure you check out our Twitters at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer, for the latest show updates and basketball updates and musings on tennis or whatever is going on in the world. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out their website, fullpresscoverage.com, for this and other great podcasts and articles. And we will talk to you soon. See you, everybody.